Hello, it is Daniel Strauss. Hello, it is Daniel Strauss, aka the Raspberry Ape, and I am here in my home gym, affectionately known as the Cave, to answer your questions about back injuries, grip training, stone lifting, and denim. First question is from Teeny TB. They ask, what is the best split for training / rolling and gym work? I struggle to fit in both during the week. I focus on Jujitsu, but find that over time my skills increase, but my strength goes down, and it would be good to have a steady progression with both. Rest days can sometimes go out the window, leading me to take more days off due to fatigue. This is a really good question, and I know it's a question that a lot of people are interested to hear the answer to. There's a few different things going on here. First thing is your body will adapt for the most part to whatever you throw at it. So a lot of people, they get an idea in their head or they want to implement some strength training into their current schedule. Let's say hypothetically you're training Jiu-Jitsu 3, 4, 5 days a week, and you decide that you want to get big and strong, and you decide to start lifting 3 days a week, heavy lifting, doing something that your body's not really used to. Yeah, you're gonna burn out really, really fast. So you need to be careful about how quickly and suddenly you increase the intensity of your training. If you do want to add strength training into your current schedule, which is at the moment just rolling, then you're gonna have to ease back on the rolling a little bit. That isn't necessarily to say that you won't be able to get back to the amount that you're rolling at the moment with the strength training on top of it. It just means that you're gonna have to factor in giving your body a little bit of time to actually make that adaptations. There is no best split because everyone is different, everyone's schedule is different. If you're a full-time athlete who is 22 years old, then you're gonna have a very different split of amount of training that you're able to handle and recover from. Whereas if you are in your early 40s and you have a full-time job and you have a family and you have lots of other commitments, it's gonna be very different. For the most part, what I recommend people to do is, if you're training, look, if you're rolling two or 3 times a week, and you want to get good at Jiu-Jitsu, it's probably best that you just stick with doing Jiu-Jitsu, to be honest with you. 2 times a week, you can't really cut back less than that to progress with Jiu-Jitsu. But if you're training 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week, you can absolutely cut back 1 or 2 of those days in order to implement some strength and conditioning work, whatever that may be. And then once you your body adapts to doing that strength work, then you can have a play with implementing, going back into doing a little bit more Jiu-Jitsu on top of that. So just be aware that you need to take some time to adapt to things and really listen to your body. When it comes to recovery, I cannot stress this enough. Sleep is the most important thing. If you're not getting a good 8 or 9 hours sleep a night, then don't worry about supplements, don't worry about ice baths and stuff like that. If your sleep isn't on point, then your recovery is not going to be good. But on top of that, just be smart with it, listen to your body, try and recover, sleep well, and ease yourself into it. Second question from Necro Horde. He being me, has had a herniated disc for a while, and I've had mine for years where I can't do deadlifts or lift heavy otherwise. Did he have surgery or what to be able to get as crazy strong as he is? Thank you very much. It's impressive and inspiring to say the least. I do appreciate that. This is a question, someone else asked this question just underneath. Same sort of thing, Big Daddy Bland. As someone who's had back problems previously, how have you rehabilitated your back to the point that I can do stone lifting? So this is a really common question that I get. I injured my back quite badly around about 7 years ago. It might have even been longer than that, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been quite a while since I've injured my back. And I've really gone through quite a long journey with this. Since I've been doing more stone lifting, more people have started messaging me. I get a message about every day or 2, and sometimes multiple a day, asking what I did to fix my back. There's a few different things that are going on here. There is the basically your management of your symptoms, which is going to be more early on in the acute phase. Maybe for me, acute is normally a couple of days, but if we break it down into phases of me treating my symptoms and kind of struggling day to day and having to work around it, it was a couple of years where I was finding out what worked for me. Now, before I start giving you any advice, I need to tell you I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional in that industry in any way, shape or form. I can't recommend you do something. All I can tell you is what worked for me, as well as saying that everyone is really different, everyone's injuries are very different, and what worked for me might not work for you, but I'm just going to let you know some of the things that I did do that really helped. First thing, heat. When basically with my back injury, especially early on, what I get is I get episodes where my back would basically become extremely stiff and I couldn't really do anything. Early on, these episodes would come on from standing up for more than 5 minutes at a time, walking for more than 5 or 10 minutes. It could trigger something in my back where my back would essentially seize up, which isn't great when you want to do jiu-jitsu, and I'd essentially have to wait for that to calm down a little bit. What I would do is hot baths are really good for this, trying to relax it. I would use a heat mat or heat pad. There is an electronic heat pad which you can put on, which is really good because you just plug it in, turn it on full, and it's going to stay hot for as long as you want it to. You don't have to put it in the microwave or heat it back up or anything. And I used to put my neoprene lifting belt over the top, and it just felt like Apollo, the sun god, was giving me a hug the entire time. So that used to, when I used to have a flare up, that was really useful. I personally, one of the biggest steps forward that I made in managing my symptoms is I, by accident, found out or came across, realized that I had a spot in my quad that would release my back, which sounds weird, but basically I had a back problem. I was in an episode where my back was really tight, painful, and I was getting a massage on my legs, and the masseuse hit a spot on my leg and kind of really worked it, and I got out of the chair afterwards. I was like, oh my god, my back feels amazing. And I realized there's one point on my quad, and like I said, this is going to be really different for everyone. I'm not telling you there's a magic spot that you know, stick your elbow in and your back's going to be fine, but this is what worked for me, and it can be weird like that. I now, if I do get an episode, instead of having to wait 2 weeks, I can sometimes fix it in 10 minutes. And what I do is I come in here and I put a kettlebell on that spot, and I just leave it on that spot. If I don't have a kettlebell, I might use a foam roller and just get it on that spot, putting my body weight down on top of it, and sometimes that can release all of the pain and just relax my back. So the body's really weird like that. It's connected in loads of different strange ways. So in terms of managing symptoms, those are two of the things that I did a lot and I continue to do sometimes. My back is way stronger, which is what I'm going to get onto in a second, but it's not 100%. So I still get episodes occasionally, and these are some of the ways that I manage them. Something that I've been doing more in the last couple of years is a lot of hanging. So just hanging from a pull-up bar, just a dead hang, trying to relax and traction my spine, so stretch out my spine. I do this every single workout. It's meant to be extremely good for your shoulders, and it's also meant to be good for your back, stretching your back out, especially if you're doing heavy stuff where it's sort of compressing the spine. It's good to stretch it out a little bit and sort of get some space in between your joints that you're crushing most of the time. So that was in terms of managing symptoms. Now in terms of rehabilitating my back, I saw a lot of specialists over many years. I had one, not surgery, but one procedure on my back, which was a nerve blocker. It did not work. The pain came back about 6 months later, pretty much how it was. But in the last couple of years, my back has really got a lot better, and the way that it's got a lot better was not through what a lot of people were recommending, like getting more flexible, stretching, doing rehab exercises. My back got a lot stronger by trying to lift heavy, basically. The problem that I had with my back is that I couldn't bend down to pick stuff off the floor, essentially. So if I could squat, you know, when my back was really at its worst, I was squatting close to, well, I was squatting 200 kilos, but I could squat 200 kilos, be fine, and then you could drop 10 1p coins on the ground and tell me to pick each one up individually, and I would not be walking properly the next day. So it was really strange like that. It's kind of counterintuitive in some ways. So it was the hinging at the hip that was really a big issue for me. So what I started to do was I started to do deadlifts, but without doing that entire movement. So just doing partial range or rack pulls, stuff like that. And basically I was doing a lot of grip training, but picking stuff off the ground, but not having to bend over too much. And as I did that, my back wasn't in pain and it was getting stronger. I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. So I continued doing that, and then I started training for the Denny stones, and I started working. And again, the Denny stones is picking really heavy things off the ground, but without having to flex your hinge at your hip too much. So I started doing that, and again, wasn't really getting any pain in the back. So my back got stronger and stronger, and then I started to find that I could actually start picking stuff off the ground, to where in the last year or so, I've really got into stone lifting, picking 130, 140 kilo awkward objects, stones and sandbags off the ground, and my back being absolutely fine. There's a lot of people, again, like I said, this is what worked for me. This is not what's going to be, it's not what's going to work for everyone. It's not a magic formula. I know people who've had very similar injuries to me who have healed it with yoga or stretching or mobility. I didn't do any of that. I fixed it by becoming stronger and making my back stronger around that injury. So it's just take from that what you will. It's not a magic solution, but it's just maybe some ideas that you might not have thought about before. I hope that helps. Okay, next question is from Robin Denton. Always wondered what his calorie input and output is, but also whether he finds stone lifting more challenging than BJJ competition, or if it's just too different to compare. Both seem to require a ton of training. So I'll get to the first one first, about calorie input and output. I have no idea what my current calorie input is. To work out your output is basically, you know, what you eat to not lose or put on weight. I have no idea what my input is at the moment. I don't count calories. When I was first putting on weight, and I was trying to be quite scientific with what I was doing, if you're really trying to put on weight, it's very, very helpful to know what you're consuming and be able to adjust your calorie input. When I was bulking up from the sort of mid 70s to 90 kilos, I was on around about 7,000 calories a day. So that's what I needed at the time. I was around about 18 or 19, still growing, but that's around about what I needed at the time with all the training that I was doing around that, to be able to put on the weight over a couple of years. But it's significantly less than that now. So no obvious answer, but lots of beef and rice. Then to your next question, which is a really good question about the differences between stone lifting and BJJ competition. First one, whether stone lifting is more challenging, like you said, it is really, really different. You can't really compare the two. They really couldn't be more different. The strength sport where you're not even, so there'll be some strength sports where you're competing against someone, and I've done like that style of competition where you have someone who you're trying to outlift, and you've got to be thinking about, you know, strategically whether they're going to be, what they're going to be going for. Let's say you only have 3 lifts. You've got to be careful what's your entry lift, what's your opening lift and stuff like that. When you're lifting against someone, stone lifting isn't even like that. Stone lifting is you versus a piece of rock. That's it. You're not competing against other people. You're just competing against that one rock. And you can talk smack at it, you can kick it, you can punch it. It really doesn't care. It's not going to change anything. So it's a very different situation compared to grappling someone where if you kick and punch them, they are going to have a little bit of a reaction. So yeah, lifting a stone, when I've done the big stone lifts, like when I did the Denny stones, the Denny stone is the only lift where I scheduled in to go and lift that, and there was a crowd there, and it was, you know, you kind of go through the procedure. I was really nervous. I don't think I was nervous. I was more nervous than I am before I fight, but that's because I hadn't done that before, and I've competed many times over many years. So in that case, just because I wasn't experienced in doing that, and I just worked really hard to try and lift this thing, it was a really big goal for me, and I traveled all the way up there, and I had people watching, and you walk up to the walk up to the stones, and you grab onto the handles, and you put your hands around the stone, and then it's just you versus the stone. But it can't be compared. You know, competing in a big Jujitsu tournament, big grappling tournament, is a crazy feeling, many emotions. you can have the best day of your life and you can still lose. Whereas when you're lifting a stone, if you have a good day, you're going to lift it, and if you have a bad day, you might not lift it. In terms of training, yeah, grappling requires a lot more training. You just got to get strong enough to lift a stone. You know when you're strong enough to lift a stone. You can never know when you're good enough to beat someone else because they so many different variables going on there. But a really good question. I like that one. Okay, 46 Fitness asks, if I had to pick just one lift / exercise that was most applicable to BJJ, what would it be? And then he's put in brackets, just for fun, only one. But because, and this is a question that I get asked very, very often, and I usually give a pretty ambiguous and bad answer where I say, well, there can't just be one lift. If I had to be boring, I would say pull-ups. I've been pretty consistent in always giving this as an answer of one of the most valuable exercises you can do as a grappler. Pull-ups are really fantastic, and if you start different variations of pull-ups and different grips and adding weight to pull-ups, you can pretty much, you know, progress and be strong with pull-ups for the rest of your life. Jiu-Jitsu really is all about pulling, and pull-up is the best pulling exercise you can do. But I'll throw you another one. I know we said just one, but I'm going to give you a boring one and a more exciting one. One that I've been really excited about and doing a lot over the last couple of years is sandbag squats. You could also have sandbag walks, but taking a really heavy, really big sandbag and holding it, there's this feeling that you get when you squat with a big 120, 130, 140 kilo sandbag. There's this feeling you get bear hugging this thing that you just don't get when you put a bar on your back. You know, the bar is designed to be lifted. It is literally made to be lifted. Whereas when you're picking up a big rock or you're picking up a sandbag, it's not ergonomic. It's not fit into your body, and neither is a human body when you're trying to wrestle it, when you're trying to grapple it. So when I take a bag and a bear hug and I do squats with it, I just feel that this is an amazing exercise for grapplers. So yeah, big sandbag squats is a really high ranking exercise for me. Okay, next question is from Aaron Goldhammer. I really hope that that's your real name, because Goldhammer is the greatest surname I have ever heard. But Aaron asks, are Turkish get-ups the best lift for grappling? Also, what kind of denim wash will give me the best gains? Two very, very good questions there. One, are Turkish get-ups the best lift for grappling? It's very, very hard to say what is the best lift for grappling. It's gonna also be down to the individual a little bit. Are they the best? You can't really say. Are they a fantastic exercise? Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Turkish get-ups are an amazing exercise. It's such an awkward movement. There's so many facets. You know, the rotational strength that you need even just to get up, and then you're basing on your hand, you're going and you're putting your feet into awkward positions relative, you know, compared to something like a squat or a deadlift. You're getting yourself into many different movements and positions as you go through the movement of a Turkish get-up. At one point you're going onto one leg. At one point you're standing up with one leg. All of these movements simulate a lot of the movements that we do when we're grappling, and especially when we're doing wrestling. And then of course the entire time your shoulders are having to work to stabilize this weight over your head. It's good for proprioception, it's good for movement, it's good for mobility, and if you can handle heavy weight with it, it's fantastic for strength as well. In terms of what denim is best, it's all about what denim works for you. Okay, you need to go into the shop and you need to start calling out, you know, summoning the denim over to you, and the one that calls out to you or the one that moves towards you, that is going to be the denim that's going to make you stronger. It's like you know, picking a wand in Harry Potter. I assume. I've never actually watched it, but I've heard enough about it. So yeah, whatever denim calls out to you is the best denim. Imis or Imis, I'm not sure about that one, but they ask, people have a hard time with their forearms from all the stress from death grips and grip work in general. What do you do to keep your forearms in good condition / how to balance grip training? Yeah, this is another really common and actually a really great question. A lot of people assume that I'm going to have a lot of issues with my hands or wrists or elbows, tendonitis and stuff like that because of the amount of grip training I do, and actually I have a lot less issues than people who don't do grip training. So it's all about, like you said in your question, it's all about balance. balance is really the key in almost every aspect of life, and it comes to, and it's also really, really important for when you're training your forearms, training your hands, training your grip strength. When you just grapple, especially if you do a lot of gi or you just do gi, if you just do gi, you're basically grabbing in the same way every single time. So what you get is you get huge imbalances built up in your forearm. Your flexors get incredibly strong, big, but tight, and your extensors are basically, your anatomy just doesn't work properly because there's a big muscular imbalance there. So if you can do lots of different types of grip training like I do, where I'm doing some thick handled, some vertical gripping, and all of the different, the pinch gripping, and doing loads of different stuff and clubs and everything. Even though I'm gripping a lot more, I'm doing much more varied gripping, which means that more parts of my forearm are being worked, which means I never get as much of an imbalance. If you don't want to do other types of grip training and you still want to try, if you don't want to spend all the time doing all this grip training, but you still want to try and correct that imbalance, then you've got to try and work your extensors a little bit more. So one way that you can work your extensors is by having a rubber band or something around your fingers and extending your fingers like that, and it's going to work your extensors here. But actually I don't really like that too much. I do prefer having a more varied more varied grip training. So one of the things that I really like to do is stick my hand in a bucket of rice. And you can use sand as well, but it's a bit messier. I use a bucket of rice, and you stick your hand in the bucket of rice and you move the bucket, you move your fingers around in it, and because you're gonna get this resistance wherever you go, because your hand is surrounded by the rice is gonna give you resistance, because you can basically do any movement you want inside the bucket, and it's gonna work your forearms. And I really like this as, it works really well as a warm-up. It works well for conditioning. If you do it for a really long time, your forearms can really burn out. And it works really well for recovery and also for trying to work out sort of prehab, stop yourself getting those imbalance issues. So yeah, do more grip training, whatever it is, just try and do some grip training outside of jiu-jitsu, full stop, make it varied, different ranges of motion. You can do a little bit of extensor work with your fingers coming out, or get yourself a bucket of rice and stick your hands in there and start moving around and doing funky stuff with that, and that would definitely help you. Okay, Gripler 1987 High Raspberry. What is the most effective grip tool / exercise for jiu-jitsu / wrestling? This is pretty much the most common question that I get asked. Once again, like one of the earlier questions, there isn't a good single answer. I can't tell you that there is. It's like saying, what is the best submission? Now, obviously the answer is guillotine, but if you ask a lot of people, if you're being serious, if you ask what is the best submission, there is no best submission. You can have a submission that is better than another submission. You can have a submission that you like more. But the reason why there's no best submission is if you just try and do one thing, your game is going to become imbalanced. Just like if you just try and do one exercise in anything. There's no one lift to do. There's no one grip exercise to do. You've got to have balance. But stuff that's really good, bang for your buck. I really like levering. A lot of people don't work, and it does help with the imbalances in the forearm as well. But grabbing onto a sledgehammer, let me grab something quick. So grabbing onto a hammer or a club, a broom handle, anything you want, and just hitting different ranges of motion. You have your supination, pronation here, and you have your imagine my arm is straight, your extension, your radial and ulnar deviation here. So you can hit lots of ranges of motion with any stick with a weight on one end. And what this can do is it really strengthens up the wrist, it strengthens up all of the connective tissue in there, can build your forearms up quite nicely, and I feel that if your wrist is strong, it will be harder for people to break your grip, because one of the reasons that grips get broken is because it's not because your grip is weak. So this is one thing people need to understand, and this is a bit of a technical point in grappling. You are able to generate a lot of force when you close your hand, as long as your wrist is straight. If you start curling your wrist around like this, you cannot close your hand anywhere near as strong. You can give it a go. You take 2 fingers, you squeeze your fingers as hard as you can, and then curl your wrist at 90 degrees and keep your wrist at 90 degrees and try and squeeze your fingers again. And you're gonna feel that you can't generate any force there. So you imagine you're gripping, whether it's the gi, whether it's a wrist, whether it's whatever it is. If your opponent starts taking you into awkward angles against your will, they can start decreasing the power that you're able to put through your arm into your hand. So by having a strong wrist, you can control the opponent and keep them in an area where you're able to express the most amount of strength in your hands. So I believe that if you're not doing anything and you just want to do one exercise, your name is Gripler, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that you do train plenty of grip training already. But for those who don't do anything and want to do just one thing, I have a video already on sledgehammer levering, but I think it's a really great exercise. It's good for the making sure that you have a variety of ranges of motion that you're training to work out any imbalances, and it makes your wrists real strong. Okay, King Kratos BJJ, how does he compare the mindset with which he approaches a competition with when he approaches lifting something like the Denny stones, and how does he compare the thrill of success for the two? Well, I've already touched on that on one of the earlier questions. The mindset is really different. There is you competing against another individual in one of the rawest, purest forms of competition. You know, it's one thing to run alongside next to someone in a race. It's one thing to be hitting a ball across to someone who's hitting it back at you, and there's another thing to be grabbing onto your opponent and trying to force them to quit whilst they try and do the same thing to you. Psychologically, there really aren't many sports like it. Even something like boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai, where it's a lot more physical in terms of the amount of damage that you can do. You're punching someone in the face. It's actually not as intimate. You know, in grappling, you are right there. You are connected to your opponent at all times, pretty much. Where at least for the most part in boxing or Thai boxing and kickboxing, you're a little bit of an arm's length or a leg's length away. But in grappling, it's incredibly intense. It's very close. There's really nothing like it. It's quite... when you actually think, we do it every day, we don't think about it, but that's the reality. We're doing something that's really crazy, incredibly intense and intimate human competition there, which can't be compared to me going and lifting up a rock. So for me, with the lifting stones, if I feel confident and I attack it, you know, I do believe in visualization. You need to believe that you're going to be able to lift something and you're going to have a chance of lifting it. If you look at something and you don't think that you're going to be able to do it, you will not be able to do it, or at the very least it will be much harder. Whereas in competition, you still have to have the same approach where you believe that you can win, but there are so many more variables going on there. Your opponent can stop you from doing that in a lot more ways than a rock can stop me from lifting it up. The thrill of success from the two, the thrill of winning a grappling show or a grappling competition or a tournament or a super fight, it's inexplainable, really unexplainable. It's not necessarily how big the event is. It's not about how hard the competition is. It's not about how hard the fight is. There are strange variables that can make a competition mean a lot. For me, the biggest, the greatest feeling I've ever had in my entire life was, there were two actually. One was a big, amazing competition, and that was quintet. When I, went to Japan to compete in quintet, and I had got 2 submissions on 2 legendary Japanese fighters, and then I fought against my hero Sakuraba, and then the Polaris team won the event, and we, were in this sumo arena, and we just won, and we felt on top of the world, and the confetti was coming down, and that was amazing. But actually, one of the biggest, most exhilarating thrills that I've ever had, I'd probably say even bigger than quintet, the greatest feeling I've had in my whole life is winning a relatively unknown competition many years ago when I was still a purple belt. It was called the Submission 1000. It was a very early sub-only show or submission show on an MMA show called Lockdown. And I was a purple belt and I was going up against some really fantastic black belts, and I really wasn't expected to win, and I didn't think that I would win, and that was pretty much the only scenario where I thought, there's no way I'm going to win this. And I surprised myself, and I managed to win the tournament. And I remember that was probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less, but it was a really long time ago, and I remember that feeling like it was yesterday. That was the greatest moment of my life for sure. So it's quite crazy. It wasn't like a big one, not Polaris or stuff like that. It was a relatively small show, but it really meant a lot to me. Comparing that to lifting stones, again, it's a similar sort of thing. It's about what it means to you. So when I lifted the Denny stone, it was really fantastic because it was a life goal of mine. It was something that I'd focused on and got obsessed with wanting to do for a really long time. It's not just about lifting a weight, it's about what lifting that weight means to you. Cannot compare it to the thrill of winning a fight or winning a tournament, but it still feels awesome. Jack Welsh, grips. What do you think is the simplest exercise that will help improve grip strength overall? Have you got examples to train grips for gi and no gi? So obviously I answered a question very similar to this before when I said that levering work with a sledgehammer or whatever is really, really useful. So I'll ignore that, but examples to train grips for gi and no gi. This is something I will elaborate on. Obviously, the gi and no gi, the biggest difference is obviously the grips, your ability to grab onto a gi and your ability not to grab onto a gi. So obviously there's going to be a different requirement for training for those two things. I don't do a lot of gi now, so I don't train some of the stuff that I used to train when I did a lot of gi work. I train a lot more no gi grip training. So the main difference between the two is that with the gi, you want to have a very strong closed fist crushing position and have a really good endurance with your hand in this sort of position here. So whether it's grabbing onto lapels, whether it's grabbing onto pistol grips, it also depends not just if you train gi or no gi, but actually depends what kind of grips do you like to take in the gi. I would never take sleeve grips. I would never take pocket grips like this. I would always take pistol grips. So for that reason, my gripping when I was training for the gi was always very closed fist like this, wherever I was training my gripping. Whereas if you played a lot of spider guard with pocket grips, then you're going to be wanting to train your fingers more in this range here. So you can get stuff like the Scramble grip trainers, for example, which I have over there, and you can, I'll go grab them. Grab these as well. So something like the Scramble grip trainers are designed for you to be able to replicate some of the positions and some of the ways that you're going to be looking to grip. Yeah, of course you can chuck a gi over the you can chuck a gi over a pull-up bar and you can do pull-ups on the lapels and stuff like that. It all works the same. But practicing what you want to do. If you want to get good at doing sleeve grips, then practice sleeve grips. One thing that I really like, if you do have some Scramble grip trainers and you want to train pistol grips, I really like sticking, these are fat grips, any tube, anything like this, if you stick it in here, what that does is it kind of replicates the arm inside the gi, so you can then work your pistol grips around that as well. So like I said, if I'm training for the gi, especially me personally, when I did train in the gi or when I do train in the gi, I'm focusing on pistol grips, lapel grips, stuff like that. It's a lot of closed hand strength. So stuff like farmer's walks works really, really well. I used to do a lot of farmer's walks early on, and my gi gripping strength, my lapels were just unrivaled. I don't do as much of that now, but of course you have the train in the gi as well. If you just do farmer's walks, you don't train in the gi, it doesn't really transfer over. So, but doing heavy farmer's walks for long distances and then training in the gi and grabbing those lapels makes it very, very strong. Compared to no gi I really focus more on my forearms more than my fingers and my hands. So it's a lot of training this position, hooking in very, very tight and working the forearms and the biceps a lot more because that's the way that you connect yourself to your opponent when you're doing no gi. It's underhooks, it's head control, it's guillotine grips, it's Kimura grips, it's back, you know, all of this stuff. It's a lot of forearm stuff. So with that sort of stuff, One of my favorite exercises is to do pull-ups with a thick-handled parallel grips here, and be doing pull-ups like this, not doing pull-ups here or here, but doing pull-ups in this sort of position. You can do a lot of arm wrestling exercises. I've spoken about this so many times before, but a lot of arm wrestling exercises, they have incredibly strong forearms. If you taught a good arm wrestler the grapple, they'd be a goddamn nightmare without the gi. So yeah, have a look at that, get inspired from arm wrestling, and get really strong forearms there. So next question, up to my mustache. How functional is denim as BJJ training gear, and where are the Scramble overalls? That's a very good question, two very good questions there. Number one, Scramble. I do think that if we did a Raspberry 8 Scramble collaboration, denim dungarees for lifting weights, they'd go down really well. As for how functional is denim as BJJ training gear, well, one of the reasons, the main reason why I started wearing jeans when I was working out is because I needed something that was really hard wearing. So when I was doing horseshoe bending and stuff like that, you want something that's a little bit grippy. You don't want sweatpants or shorts, and something that gives you a little bit of cushioning. And then I was lifting stones. Now, if you have some lightweight materials, a lot of the time the abrasiveness of the stones you can feel it a lot, or it's gonna tear your clothes up. Jeans are fantastic for that. They're really hard wearing, which is why I wear denim. When I started wearing denim, when I work out, unfortunately, you take that denim and you try and take it to the BJJ mat. You got buckles, you got zips, you got pockets and stuff like that. Which is why, with Scramble, we made, don't worry here, the lumberjack range with the denim look Valetudo shorts. So you can take all of the power of denim and you could put it into something that was designed for grappling. So the denim look Valetudo shorts that we make, collaboration between myself and Scramble, is the way to get the power of denim with the functionality of grappling wear. John Avil Azores, I hope I got that somewhat right. Favorite exercise that helps with tearing cards. The best exercise for helping you tear cards is to tear cards. This is an obvious answer, but this is a really, really truthful answer, and it actually brings up a topic, which is if you want to get good at doing something, you have to do that thing. If you want to get strong at doing something, you have to do that thing again. If you want to have really good lapel grips, you gotta do lapel, you gotta grab onto lapels. You're not gonna get strong grabbing on, which is why you have people who have never done any sort of grip training who have incredibly strong grips when you train with them, because they've had a lot of time practicing those things. Now you can get to that really strong, you can become very, very strong much faster if you supplement whatever you want to get good at with some training around that. But regardless of what you want, if you want strong arm bars, do arm bars. If you want strong RNCs, do RNCs. You can do stuff to help with it, but nothing will replicate actually doing the thing that you want to get good or you want to get strong at. It's the same for card tearing. If you want to get good at card tearing, you got to tear some cards. This seems like an invitation for me to tear some cards. Now I will do this really quick. So, there's lots of instructionals for tearing cards. Keep these up here. There's lots of instructionals for tearing cards, and I'm not going to give you one, but I will tell you a few things. If you want to get strong at tearing cards, then you need to tear cards. I just buy bulk cheap cards, and that means that I can practice it a lot. If you can't tear a full deck, which most people won't be able to, then what you can do is you can start with a small amount, you can tear that, and you can add more cards on. Just like you want to bench press 100 kilos, you don't start with 100 kilos and fail, you start with 50 kilos and then you go 55 and then 60 and you work your way up. The thing is with card tearing, it's a very weird movement, and there's a lot of sensitivity with your hands, the dexterity. You need to get in a very specific position. It requires a lot of practice. You will not get good at tearing cards without practicing tearing cards. I have a piece of equipment here called Ugly Rubber, which was made by a really great strongman called Dennis Rogers, which is a piece of thick rubber the same size as a pack of cards, and it allows you to practice tearing cards without having to spend loads of money on cards. Still not going to be as good for you as tearing cards, but that's a really, really excellent supplementary training for it. But I don't think he actually produces these anymore, so that's worth millions now. Thing is, what you want to do when you tear cards, get yourself into a strong position here. So I use 2 fingers. My 3rd finger is going to just act as a base on the bottom, and then you're looking to get this S position here. You see that? So when you do this, the energy from one side and the energy from the other side is going to meet in the middle. If you just do something like that, you're not going to be able to find a point where the energy is going to meet. So look, you take the bottom bit here, you take the top bit here, and I'm going to curl this in slightly here, like that, and I'm going to hold that nice and strong, and then I'm going to pull the other one backwards. You see how I get this here? If the camera can pick up the focus. And what that does is it gives you that one point where those 2 energies are going to meet in opposite directions, and hopefully without a warm-up, I can demonstrate. You can hear it and you can see it start to go at that point, if the camera will actually focus on it. So from there, it's just about holding nice and strong and continuing to turn in that range of motion to start to tear the cards. Once you've got the start of it done, if you can tear through all of the cards, then you're basically there. It does actually get harder to rip the rest off, because you get less of a grip of what you're grabbing onto. But once you can get through all of the cards, then it's just about continuing to practice that, getting stronger, staying nice and tight when you rip it, and then just continuing to work through it. Any wrist training that you do is going to help you tear cards, but without tearing lots of decks, you won't be able to do it. Max Nick, I can't pronounce your surname, but I do remember you from Kingtas. If you had to change your workout gear from denim to another type of material, what would it be and why? Well, I already use a little bit of flannel. That's another powerful item of clothing and a powerful material. Yeah, maybe I could go more flannel, maybe some flannel shorts, something like that. Kilts. I do some training with kilts originally to try and give me that Scottish power for lifting the dinny stones, but the kilts are definitely a very strong material and piece of clothing. It's anything that makes you feel strong. If wearing leather and latex makes you feel powerful, then go wear that. Clapped Guy, does he consider himself competing on an even playing field when he is such a prolific user of performance enhancing denim? It's a really fantastic question. It's something that I do feel guilty about sometimes, but I only use denim in training. I don't use denim, or I haven't used denim yet in competition. So for me, that makes it equal. However, we've got the lumberjack range, and I have the denim look Valetudo shorts. The next time I'm competing, I may well use them, and that might be a real ethical issue there. Davey Muruman, I have a ton of questions having done strongman and now jiu-jitsu, but I guess I'd like to know if the log has any place in training whilst doing jiu-jitsu. Dave or Davey is referring to the strongman log, big cylinder with handles in the middle. Yeah, absolutely, I love the log. It is, again, I just kind of love everything that's a little bit more awkward, and it's a lot more awkward than lifting with a barbell. The nice thing about the log is actually getting it up to your chest is really awkward. It requires a lot of upper back strength to get it up there. So I think the log absolutely is a great exercise and a great tool for strength training for jiu-jitsu, yeah. Shane Hunter asks, does he dye the small white patches in his beard for a complete original look? It's referring to this. I also have it in my eyelash and my eyebrow. I do not dye it. This is how I was made. I am already completely original. The myth goes that the jealous goddess Hera sent 2 snakes to me when I was a mere babe in a crib, and I strangled them both, but one of them spat some venom out and it landed on my face, and that's what scarred it white. Just a myth though, that's what they say. JM Fit asks, how do you periodize your weight training? For example, do you do power stages, strength stages, explosive stages, etc. that help with your jiu-jitsu game, or are you all strongman? This is a good question. I have definitely in the last couple of years moved away from the scientific approach to lifting, but it is something that I've done in the past. I've followed some programs, I've done periodization, I've done power phases, I've done strength phases, I've done conditioning phases. It's not something that I do at the moment, but it definitely has a place. I consider my lifting now more of an art than a science, I guess. But that's something that you have to do. You have to be training for many years to be able to train like that. I don't stick to a solid program. I kind of just train somewhat instinctively. And then I set myself strength related goals like lifting stones or doing other things, which is gonna help direct what I'm doing in the training. Maybe when I get into more consistent grappling competition, maybe having periodization, different phases, a certain amount of time out from a competition will be a thing. The thing is with periodization is how often, as a grappler, how often are you competing? If you're competing every weekend, you're not going to be able to do that. You're actually going to struggle to, have much of an improvement in your strength or conditioning because you're competing so often. You can never push yourself that much. So there's many variables going on there. But for me personally, I just play it a little bit instinctively. So yeah. Next question from Eron. Do you think you'll ever enter a strongman event? And will we see you back on the Polaris mat or just behind the mic? So firstly, you will absolutely see me on the mat at Polaris. I really love commentating at Polaris. I do think it's one of the best events in the world. And I love commentating, but I am still just about young enough to be competing, and I'm really looking forward to getting back on the competition mats and competing on Polaris and trying to entertain and trying to take some necks home with me. As for your other question, do I think I'll ever compete in a strongman event? Back in the day when I was doing a lot of strongman, like world strongest man sort of stuff, like there's a difference between like strongman and modern day strongman. I like a lot of the older strongman stuff. But yeah, the modern strongman stuff being like at the stones, log press, deadlifts, big squats, carries, medleys, presses, stuff like that. There was a time where I was doing a lot of that stuff and I was on most things. I was sort of at a level where I could potentially compete and do all right at some low level strongman events. But my bad back always meant that I couldn't deadlift anything. I couldn't pick a 100 kilo bar off the ground for fear of injuring my back even further. So that stopped me from ever entering any strongman events when all of my training partners around me at the gym were entering strongman events. I still don't do straight bar deadlift, but it is potentially something that I might be able to do in the future. I don't have a huge urge to do it. It just doesn't appeal to me that much. Something that appeals to me a lot more is actually arm wrestling. Maybe after my jiu-jitsu competition career is a little bit behind me, I might look to get into some masters strongman events and almost certainly do a little bit of arm wrestling because I love the sport, I do. Inverted Beast 904, what's his workout plan to look like him? If you ever want to look like someone, unfortunately, you need to go back in time and make sure that you share the same DNA as them. I don't know how you do that, but somehow, be birthed by the same two parents. You're never going to look exactly like someone. Doesn't matter if you train the same way. You can train the same way as someone and you can look and perform in really vastly different ways. But if you eat your food, lots of meat and lots of rice, and you lift heavy and you do it for a really long consistent time, you might and you probably will look better than me. The Chalk Dust asks, is Cleos returning later this year or next? Cleos shall be returning, Cleos being the grappling tournament that I run. It will be returning as soon as we are all allowed to resume training and leave our houses. Finally, Johnny Toldo. What is your best jiu-jitsu memory and why? I kind of spoke about it earlier, which was that tournament, that Submission 1000, the first big tournament that I won when I was a purple belt, and I beat my, submitted my first black belt and stuff like that. That was really the greatest moment for me. Overall, like that feeling that I had was just, it's completely indescribable. But my best jiu-jitsu memory is probably, obviously getting my black belt is really nice, stuff like that. But it had to be, it was my match with Sakuraba, obviously. And specifically, there was a moment during my match with Sakuraba where he jumped over me. So for those not familiar with Sakuraba, one, shame on you, do your homework please. But Sakuraba back in the day used to jump over and try and, stomp on his opponents or jump over them to pass the guard. He used to do that quite a lot. And I was on my back and he was standing and he did a little run and jumped over. And there was a moment where I was looking up and we're in this huge arena and I'm looking up and the lights are coming down and I see Sakuraba and it was like it was in slow motion and I see him above me and I just had this moment where I sort of, broke the fourth wall almost in my own head where everything froze. I was like, what is going on here? This is surreal, this is a dream, this is madness, I can't believe this is happening. And yeah, that entire match, there's that one moment that I really remember in my head of him jumping over, in that moment where I saw him flying over me and all the lights behind him sort of blurring him out a little bit, and that's the greatest memory, and I'll take that to the grave. Guys, thank you very much for all of your questions. It's always a pleasure to interact with you guys and to do it through the fantastic Scramble brand. Of course, if you want to look as dapper as I do in my lumberjacked rash guard and of course my lumberjack shorts underneath this, then head on over to scramblestuff.com, and I think there are still some sizes left that you can get your hands on. You can look big and strong. Take it easy guys, I'll catch you next time.